A, chờ a cha Quỳnh trà. Chà, to rub. Mẹ, Mom, I miss the way you rubbed my sensitive belly button with your sun green oil to calm my stomach aches. Because who exactly knew what I was eating growing up in the diaspora? I'd reciprocate and rub your scalp, temples, arms, and back with the same green oil to try and help bring feeling back into your muscles from sewing all day and doing others' nails all weekend. Ô ngờ ong, bờ ong bong, bong, flower or to blossom. You were 2 months from graduating high school and wanted to be a doctor before your life changed in April 1975. Why did you want to be a doctor? What did you want to grow up into, blossom into? Did you dream? Can I dream because you did? Chà Bông. I don't remember exactly how young I was, though I remember how our first trip to Vegas felt. I was at the age that while I didn't necessarily have words for feeling anxious and excited to go on a long distance trip from Westminster, California, I knew that something new, something different was happening. I was in early puberty. My body and my voice were transforming much faster than my mind and emotions could follow. Our extended family of second cousins and family friends from East San Jose would join us and cram into the back of my dad's white Toyota pickup truck, fitted with a full-size mattress and fresh bed sheets, so we'd be a bit more comfortable than having to sit on the hard trunk surface. While there weren't so much into the tight back arrangement, I thought I was having the time of my life, bouncing from second cousin to second cousin, asking if they'd want to play hand clapping games with me. Many hours later, finally arriving in Vegas, my eyes and cheeks were glued to the truck side windows, veering off into the glitz and glam of the strip. I remember that feeling of enchantment and wonder soon dissipating as the truck stopped at a motel parking lot, and my family telling me to shush after trying to ask many times where we were and what we were doing. I'd see my dad go into a building with the sign office plastered above, coming back to the truck, and with my uncle, who was previously at the passenger seat, would walk up a flight of stairs, past some doors that looked exactly the same, and open and enter into one of them. We'd go in pairs out of the truck a few minutes after the last to the same room. I'd go with my eldest second cousin, backpack in tow, and walk into the room with every one of my family's pairs of eyes, looking anxiously to make sure we got in safely. My mom and brother were last. We closed the door, and it seemed like everyone else except for me let out a huge sigh of relief. All 10 of us had successfully gone from cramming into a truck on the road to cramming into one motel room, and now the party was just getting started. The TV was turned on, loud viêt pop was going off, and people were rushing for the bathroom. My mom was always the queen of road trip food, or at least in my eyes. For this one, she took out heaping plastic bags filled with goodies, chè, bánh, chả, and more, foods she prepared for days leading up to the trip. Our family would surround and swarm my mom, oftentimes grabbing and eating faster than my mom could try to equally distribute among everyone. Chà Bông was one of those foods, neatly packed in Ziploc sandwich bags and wafting and replacing the dry motel air with nước mắm fish sauce marinated porky goodness. I'd forget we were in a motel for a moment, thinking we were at home or in a busy banh mi shop. The air then filled with moments of chewing silence in between laughter and talking. We'd engulf these stringy, sweet, savory, and cloud-like fluffy morsels. Even though I never told her, I'm glad my mom brought chà bông. While good in cháo, rice porridge, or on crispy bánh rice paper, my favorite way to enjoy it was and still is by itself. And while we'd weirdly and ironically scarf down $29.99 all-you-can-eat buffet Buffet is just hours later. And throughout our trip, this moment of savoring my mom's chà bông in the middle of a desert, I would later realize be an emblem of cultural survival in a new diasporic world. À, chà Quỳnh trà, ô ngờ ong, bờ ong bông, trà bông. My mom started buying them when she started working on the weekends at the nail salon, in addition to her job during the week at St. John's as a seamstress. Work, cook, care, sleep. Work, cook, care, sleep. It felt like that for a while. My rhythm during those angsty teenage years seemed out of sync from hers. School, an after school thing like a sport or drama, eat really quickly what she made for dinner, homework, and sleep a little bit if I had the chance. We were both working, producing, though for what? Ngoại lived with us too, though I couldn't tell if she liked that. Those years are a bit of a blur, though I remember a few years later when Ngoại went to live at the nursing home instead. And while it was just 3 minutes to walk there, it felt weird. The chà bông my mom bought also felt weird, packaged in clear containers and tied in plastic blue or red string. They were darker, clumpier, saltier, sweeter, and to be honest, more stale than my mom's. It was chà bông, though not her chà bông. À, chà Quỳnh trà, ô ngờ ong, bờ ong bông, chà bông. I remember the day my mom told me she had cancer. It was 5 years after I had first come out to her, a cyclical period of feeling sad, connecting about my queerness, then leaving, then reconnecting, and then leaving again. I had just transitioned out of a job a few months before, at the end of 2015, as a public high school teacher and nonprofit youth organizer. It was a few months later, a weekday in March, and I was on the Bay Bridge from San Francisco to the East Bay, just having finished a shift. My mom called, then again, then a third time. I really rarely pick up my phone when I'm driving, and this time I made an exception and put the call on speakerphone. That was the beginning of a 3-year journey of caregiving and learning the multitudes of love that my mom always had for me, but I was finally willing to accept. It was the beginning of visiting her almost every weekend, gardening with her, cooking and eating with her, and being with her. There's something about seeing your Viet mom in a different light, a different way as they age. And my mom, while physically weaker, was coming out on her own. It was as if the physical changes were affecting her mental state, because those 3 years up until her passing were some of the most peaceful and joyful in our relationship I'd ever experienced. I remember the first time I visited, since she had told me. We made banseo, and it was the first time I ever was in the kitchen with my mom, and I was on the heat stove. I was almost always regulated growing up to make the rice in the rice cooker, wash herbs, unstick the frozen egg roll wrappers from each other, or set the table. But never did I cook on the heat. And here I was, cooking alongside her, not aside from her. It was the first time in my life I felt we were both transforming alongside each other. About a year before she passed, I became somewhat obsessed with asking about stories about our family related to food. It was another Saturday night dinner, and my mom lied down flat on the couch while my dad cleared and cleaned and washed dishes. My mom was starting to do that more often due to stomach and muscle pains. I asked if I could ask her some questions about and to share her boat refugee experience. And without explicitly asking about food, it felt like every point of her story revolved around it. I learned that the last thing she cooked and made before she left Vietnam was chà bông. She didn't know how long they'd be out at sea for. My parents sold most of their belongings and exchanged gold to get on these escape boats disguised as market boats in the middle of the night. To where? To freedom? To somewhere else they wanted to be, but there? My dad left on an earlier boat, and my mom and brother joined other moms and children in a separate one. It was 6 days of treacherous seas, and all the ration foods were gone, and any leftover rice was tarnished with gasoline. My brother's son was starving and on the brink of dying. My mom brought out the chà bông she made, carefully unraveling the many layers of cloth that helped to keep it dry and from spoiling, fed my brother, and shared some with everyone else on the boat. And the next morning, a large US military ship found that boat and brought my mom and brother to a refugee camp in the Philippines, and later reuniting with my dad. That was the beginning of my family's journey to be sponsored by a family in Iowa where I was born. Chà bông literally saved my brother. It saved my mom. It allowed me to be here, alive. Mẹ, dạy con nấu được không? Mom, can you teach me how to cook it? Oh, she responded with a head nod. It was a simple way my mom would agree to things without having to say much. I hadn't been sleeping very well those years since I started taking care of her. I started sleeping a little bit easier that night. À, chào Bình Trà. Ô ngờ ông, vợ ông Bông, Chà Bông. Chào mẹ. Dear mom, what does it mean to try to cook a dish I've only tasted from what you made and told me stories about, though didn't get a chance to cook it with you before you transitioned on? Can these past memories embodied and embedded in my tongue, nose, and mind be enough to translate to make new memories so that my hands, my senses, and my cooking are like yours? That my cooking, the way I move in the kitchen and live in the world, makes home like how you made home for me and how your caregivers cooked and made home for you. I always thought you were stuck in the past, that the trauma of the war and whatever ailed you would prevent you from being able to look ahead, to be and evolve into the future. But knowing that you did that you made chà bông, most likely not knowing what was going to happen, but knew what you could to survive and did survive literally, makes me hopeful, grateful. Chà bông was your journey food, fuel and nourishment to get you and our family somewhere. You looked ahead, you embodied cultural survivalism and hopeful futurism. I've tried many times to make it, and it's not quite yet yours. Though maybe that's not the point. That maybe the committed practice of trying to make this dish and remembering you, your spirit, your essence, and your resilience to survive and think ahead is what's more important here. That I can carry on you and your stories forward. That the taste, flavors, and smells of what I make doesn't have to be you, though rather it is of you and the many generations before. That what was yours was meant to be mine, and what is and will be mine will be because of you and for my loved ones, our loved ones. When I make it, and every time I cook now since you transitioned on, I feel like it's a conversation, a reconnection, a chance to speak with you. Even though you're not in this present reality, I feel like we're talking again and you're guiding me. Thêm nước mắm đi, add more fish sauce, I'd hear in my head, or even in the many times I'd be exhausted from a full day of work or a week of work, I'd hear you encourage me to make something and not shortcut, to make something nourishing so that the spirit of my soul can not just survive, but thrive. There were a few times we shared on this earth that you verbally told me that you love me, though now I realize in all of your cooking, feeding, and caring for me, you've been loving me since day one. And even though I didn't quite learn to accept those cues, I now realize you said, mẹ thương Hải thật nhiều, that you loved me more than time could tell. Thank you, mẹ. Cảm ơn mẹ. Men, love, Hải.